I felt the bass vibrating through my chest. The crowd pressed against me from all sides, sweat glistening on my skin under the festival lights. The music was intoxicating, but nothing compared to the way his eyes had been following me all night. When he finally moved through the crowd toward me, I didn't step back. I leaned into him, our bodies moving together with the rhythm, his breath hot against my neck as his hands found my waist. "You've been watching me," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the pounding music. His lips curved into a knowing smile. "Guilty," he murmured, pulling me closer until there was no space left between us. The crowd around us faded into background noise as his fingers traced along my spine, sending shivers through me despite the desert heat. Loving what you're hearing so far? Hit that like button and subscribe. I promise this story gets even better, and you won't want to miss what happens next. The festival lights painted everything in electric blues and purples, casting shadows that danced across our bodies as we moved together. I'd come to Palm Springs for the music, for the escape, but I hadn't expected him. Caden. He'd told me his name when he bought me a drink earlier, his voice smooth like aged whiskey, his presence magnetic in a way that made every other person fade into the background. Now, hours later, we were still dancing, but it had evolved into something else entirely. His hands never left me, exploring the bare skin where my crop top met the waistband of my shorts, fingers tracing patterns that made my breath catch. The crowd surged around us, bodies pressing closer, creating a cocoon of heat and movement that felt both public and intensely private. "Come with me," he said, his lips brushing against my ear, sending electricity down my spine. I didn't hesitate. I took his hand, letting him lead me through the sea of dancing bodies, past the main stage where the headliner was building to their crescendo, toward the quieter edges of the festival grounds. Behind a cluster of vendor tents, away from the main crush of people but still within earshot of the pulsing music, he turned to face me. The colored light still reached us here, painting his features in alternating shades of pink and gold. Without a word, he pressed me back against the canvas wall of a tent, his body caging me in, his eyes dark with intention. "Are we really doing this?" I breathed, my heart hammering against my ribs. The question was rhetorical. We both knew the answer from the moment our eyes first met across the crowd. His response was to capture my lips with his, the kiss deep and urgent, tasting of craft beer and summer nights. My hands found the hem of his shirt, pulling it up, needing to feel his skin against mine. He was lean but strong, his muscles tensing under my touch as I traced the lines of his torso. The music provided perfect cover as his mouth moved from my lips to my neck, finding that sensitive spot just below my ear that made me gasp. His hands were everywhere, tangling in my hair, skimming along my sides, teasing the edge of my shorts. Every touch sent waves of heat through me, building something that felt bigger than the both of us. "Not here," I managed to say, though my body was screaming the opposite. "Too many people." He pulled back just enough to meet my eyes, his pupils dilated, breathing heavy. "My tent's just over there," he said, nodding toward a row of camping setups beyond the vendor area. "If you want to," I answered by taking his hand and pulling him in that direction. The walk felt endless and instantaneous all at once, anticipation building with every step. His tent was tucked between two larger ones, partially hidden by the shadows cast by a nearby food truck that had closed for the night. Inside, the space was small but surprisingly comfortable. He'd strung battery-powered fairy lights along the ceiling, creating a warm, intimate glow. The sound of the festival was muffled here, the bass still present but distant, like a heartbeat. "Better?" he asked, his voice softer now, almost reverent. Instead of answering with words, I reached for him again, my fingers working at the buttons of his shirt while his hands found the zipper of my top. We moved with urgent efficiency, clothes disappearing piece by piece until we were skin to skin, the fairy lights casting golden shadows across our bodies. He laid me down on the sleeping bag, his touch gentle but sure. Every kiss, every caress, was deliberate, as if he was memorizing me. When his mouth traveled lower, tracing a path down my stomach, I arched beneath him, my fingers gripping the fabric beneath me. The sensation was overwhelming, his lips, his tongue, the way he seemed to know exactly how to make me gasp and tremble. The distant music created a rhythm that seemed to match the pounding of my pulse, the two sounds blending together until I couldn't tell where the festival ended and this moment began. "You're incredible," he murmured against my skin, his voice rough with desire. The words sent another wave of heat through me, and I pulled him up to kiss me, tasting myself on his lips. When he positioned himself above me, our eyes locked, the question unspoken but clear. I nodded, my hands on his shoulders, pulling him closer. The moment we connected, the world outside ceased to exist. There was only us, only this, the gentle rock of his hips, the the way he filled me completely. The soft sounds of pleasure that escaped my lips, despite my efforts to stay quiet. We moved together with increasing urgency, finding a rhythm that was all our own. His forehead pressed against mine, our breath mingling, sweat beginning to gather on our skin despite the cooler desert night air. Every thrust sent sparks through my nervous system, building towards something that felt inevitable and earth-shattering. "Don't stop," I whispered, my nails digging into his back. "Please don't stop." He didn't. If anything, he moved with renewed intensity, his rhythm becoming more demanding, more focused. I could feel myself climbing toward the edge, every nerve ending alive with sensation. The fairy lights blurred above us as my vision began to fragment, the approaching climax making my entire body tense with anticipation. When it hit, it was like lightning, sudden, blinding, all-consuming. I cried out despite myself, my body arching off the sleeping bag as waves of pleasure crashed over me. He followed moments later, his own release triggering another smaller wave through my sensitized body. We collapsed together, breathing hard, skin slick with sweat, the fairy lights casting their gentle glow over our intertwined forms. The music from the festival continued, but it felt like it was coming from another world entirely. "That was..." I started, then trailed off, not sure how to finish. "Yeah," he agreed, his arm tightening around me. "It was." We lay there in comfortable silence, listening to the distant sounds of the festival winding down. I traced lazy patterns on his chest, marveling at how natural this felt, how right it seemed despite the fact that we'd been strangers just hours ago. "I should probably get back to my friends," I said eventually, though I made no move to get up. "Should you?" he asked, his fingers combing through my hair. "Or should you stay here with me?" The suggestion sent another flutter of desire through me, but I also felt the pull of responsibility, of the friends who were probably wondering where I'd disappeared to. "They'll be worried," I said, though my resolve was wavering. "Text them," he suggested, his lips finding my shoulder. "Tell them you're safe. Tell them you'll catch up with them tomorrow." His mouth on my skin was making it hard to think clearly. "And what would we do with all that time?" I asked, though I was already reaching for my phone. "I have some ideas," he said, his hand sliding down my side, making me shiver. "Starting with this." His touch rekindled the fire that had barely cooled, and I found myself responding eagerly, my phone forgotten as he began kissing his way down my body again. This time he was slower, more thorough, as if we had all the time in the world. And maybe we did. The festival would go on for 2 more days, and suddenly the idea of spending them tangled up with this beautiful stranger seemed like the best possible use of my time. "You're sure about this?" I asked as he settled between my legs, his eyes meeting mine with unmistakable intent. "Are you?" He countered, his breath warm against my most sensitive skin. Instead of answering, I let my head fall back, surrendering to the sensation as he began to work his magic once again. The festival lights painted patterns on the tent walls around us, but all I could focus on was him. His mouth, his hands, the way he seemed to know exactly what I needed. By the time he moved back up my body, I was already trembling with need again. When he entered me this time, it was slower, more deliberate, as if he was savoring every moment. We rocked together gently at first, then with increasing passion as the familiar rhythm took hold. "You feel so good," I whispered, my hands roaming. Over his back, his shoulders, anywhere I could reach. "So perfect." The words seemed to unlock something in him, and his movements became more intense, more focused. I wrapped my legs around his waist, pulling him deeper, meeting each of his thrusts with my own upward motion. The fairy lights swayed above us, as our movements grew more urgent, casting dancing shadows that seemed to echo our rhythm. This time when I climaxed, it was slower, deeper, rolling through me in waves that seemed to go on forever. He held me through it, his own breathing ragged as he fought for control, finally letting go when my body's trembling triggered his own release. We stayed connected for a long moment afterward, neither wanting to break the spell. Eventually, he rolled to the side, pulling me with him so that I was curled against his chest, our legs still tangled together. "I can't believe this is happening," I murmured against his skin. "Good unbelievable or bad unbelievable?" he asked, his fingers tracing patterns on my back. "Definitely good," I assured him, tilting my head up to meet his eyes. "Very, very good." The festival music had shifted to something mellower now, the late-night DJ playing ambient tracks that seemed to wrap around us like a blanket. Other festival goers were settling in for the night, the sounds of zippers and muffled conversations drifting through the tent walls. "Should we try to get some sleep?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to miss a moment of this by sleeping. "Eventually," he said, his hand sliding down to cup my hip. "But not yet. His touch reignited the familiar warmth, and I found myself pressing closer to him, my body already responding to his proximity. "What did you have in mind?" I asked, though the growing evidence of his interest was already pretty clear. Instead of answering with words, he began kissing me again, slow and deep, his hands roaming over my body with renewed purpose. This time there was no urgency, no rush toward release. Instead, we explored each other thoroughly, learning what made the other gasp, what touches drew the sweetest sounds. When he finally moved inside me again, it was with a gentleness that made my heart race for entirely different reasons. We moved together slowly, savoring each sensation, each kiss, each whispered endearment. It was intimate in a way that went beyond the physical, as if we were sharing something deeper than just our bodies. The climax, when it came, was gentle but no less intense, washing over us both like a warm tide. We held each other through it, breathing in sync, completely lost in the moment. Afterward, as we lay entwined in the soft glow of the fairy lights, I found myself thinking about tomorrow, about what would happen when the festival ended and we returned to our separate lives. The thought filled me with an unexpected sadness. "Hey," he said softly, as if sensing my shift in mood. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," I said, then reconsidered. This is perfect, and I don't want it to end." He was quiet for a moment, his fingers still combing through my hair. "It doesn't have to," he said finally. We could figure something out." The suggestion sent a flutter of hope through my chest, but I tried to keep my expectations realistic. "You don't even know me," I pointed out. "This could just be a festival fling?" "Could be," he agreed. "Or it could be the beginning of something amazing." I looked up at him, searching his face for any sign that he was just saying what he thought I wanted to hear. But his eyes were serious, sincere, and I felt that flutter of hope grow stronger. "I live in San Francisco," I said. "Where are you?" "LA," he replied. So, not exactly next door, but not impossible either. The distance was manageable, I realized. Definitely worth exploring for something that felt this right. "So what are you thinking?" I asked, my heart starting to race again, though for different reasons now. "I'm thinking," he said, rolling us over so that he was hovering above me again, "that we have 2 more days of this festival to figure it out. And in the meantime," his lips found mine again, and all thoughts of the future dissolved into the perfect present moment. Outside, the festival continued, but inside our little cocoon of fairy lights and desire, we created our own world, one that revolved around touch and taste and the growing connection between us. As the night deepened around us, we made love again and again, each time discovering something new about each other, each time the bond between us growing stronger. By the time exhaustion finally claimed us, curled together in the sleeping bag with the fairy lights dimmed to almost nothing, I knew that this was more than just a festival hookup. This was the beginning of something real. When I woke the next morning, golden sunlight was filtering through the tent walls, and the sounds of the festival coming to life filled the air. For a moment, I was disoriented, unsure where I was, but then I felt the warm body next to me, and everything came flooding back. Caden was still asleep, his face peaceful in the morning light, one arm draped possessively over my waist. I studied his features, memorizing them, hardly believing that last night had really happened. As if sensing my gaze, his eyes fluttered open, and when he saw me watching him, a slow smile spread across his face. "Morning, beautiful," he said, his voice rough with sleep. "Morning," I replied, suddenly feeling shy despite everything we'd shared. "Sleep well?" he asked, pulling me closer. "Eventually," I said with a laugh. "You?" "Best sleep I've had in years," he admitted, pressing a kiss to my forehead. We lay there for a while longer, listening to the festival waking up around us, neither wanting to break the spell of the morning. Eventually, though, the call of nature and the need for coffee became too strong to ignore. "I should probably check in with my friends," I said reluctantly, "and I should probably make sure I still have a job to go back to," he said with a rueful laugh. I may have been less than professional in my last few texts to my boss. As we got dressed, stealing kisses and touches along the way, I felt a pang of uncertainty. What happened now? Did we exchange numbers and hope for the best? Did we make concrete plans to see each other again? As if reading my thoughts, Caden reached for his phone. "What's your number?" he asked. "I want to make sure I can find you again when we get back to the real world." Relief flooded through me as I gave him my information, watching him type it carefully into his contacts. This wasn't ending here. Whatever this was between us, it was going to continue. "So," I said as we finished getting ready. "Same time tonight?" His grin was answer enough, but he sealed it with a kiss that made my knees weak. Wouldn't miss it for the world. As I finally made my way back to find my friends, I couldn't stop smiling. The festival was just beginning, but I'd already found the best part of the whole weekend. And if Caden was right, maybe I'd found something. That would last long after the music stopped. Have you ever had a moment that changed everything, where a stranger became something more in just one night? Sometimes the best adventures happen when you least expect them. What would you have done in my place? Drop a comment below and let me know. And if you want more stories like this, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next.